Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our session. I am Scott Devini, a Vice President of Riverbed Technologies Public Sector Division. I'm joined this morning by Marlon McFate, the Chief Technology Officer of Riverbed's Public Sector Division, and Rob Schuman, the Deputy CEO of Riverbed Technology. This morning, we'll be discussing accelerating government's remote productivity. As we all know, government agencies have undergone a dramatic shift in the way they work, with a large segment of the workforce pursuing mission goals remotely. But as agencies look towards the future of work, how can technology leaders incorporate the lessons from this period of telework and build a sustainable mobile workforce strategy for the future? During this digital webcast, we'll show how government IT departments are maximizing workforce productivities and ensuring continuity of operations both remotely and in the office. We'll explore what the new normal looks like for a productive workforce and the role networking optimization and visibility play in enabling it. Marlon and Rob, we've heard a lot this morning about how to keep employees motivated, engaged, and productive while working remotely. Let's start by talking about the IT infrastructure required to actually enable this productivity. From your perspective, what is the most important thing for IT departments to prioritize for workforce productivity?
Scott, great question. In my position as a CTO for Riverbed, what I've noticed is, or what I've found is that performance and agility are probably the primary areas to focus. Riverbed has focused on performance. It's really what we have been about since our inception so many years ago. I'm betting probably many people here that are listening to this think of Riverbed as the WAN optimization company. It's really what made us famous, and we still are that. And in the end, performance is measured by end user experience. Let's face it, in the end, these environments that we build are to allow, either a mission or a task to be accomplished by end users. And I think what we've realized when we work from home is, while it's a completely horrible situation, it's also kind of uncovered some of the issues that we've been experiencing, probably in a more minor way, and it's just kind of become much larger in this particular situation. And again, those really kind of revolve around performance and agility, or the lack of performance and agility. It's interesting that in the pursuit of modernization efforts in general, which we're all doing, when we stop and ask ourselves, what is the limiting factor in our environment, oftentimes we overlook one area, and that's the network itself. How we build it, how we deploy it, how we manage it. It's the limiting factor at this point. The network is, very time intensive to make changes. It's the fragile part. It's the non-agile part. It's the part that if it fails, all other efforts or parts will fail with it, right? And now we have this situation where all of our end users who used to be within our private boundary, sitting at their desk working, going across a private network to access their applications, regardless if the applications were in the cloud or if they were SaaS like Office 365. And they've kind of exploded to the outside. We've almost flipped the entire model. Now they're all sitting on the outside, coming in through VPNs and through internet connections and having to go to different areas. So we're experiencing capacity issues because the path between end user and their application has changed in many times, or many ways. It has elongated, so distances, and obviously that adds latency, so there's another performance issue. These applications oftentimes reside in a SaaS provider or in the cloud. And then of course there is, as government, we have regulations or requirements for where internet traffic has to go, how traffic has to flow, all these different pieces, which really kind of just make the situation slightly more difficult than we might see with our commercial counterparts. So Riverbed, unbeknownst to a lot of people or organizations, have been taking care of this particular environment or these particular situations for a long time And then also, of course, you had a very large workforce that was mobile before. You probably didn't realize that. So what we've developed is the technology to be able to optimize, just as we do within the private environment, which we're doing for a lot of our government customers, but for individual end users, regardless if they're sitting at home on their, in their office or on their couch or at their kitchen counter. And this is good because what we're dealing with is a wide area network that's relying heavily on the internet, which really has no guarantees for performance. But Riverbed can help with that with the Client Accelerator.
Rob, anything to add to Marlon's comments?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're seeing is there's a lot of customers that are continuing to continuing to leverage their legacy applications, many of which of those are very data heavy, and they're having to do that in this new environment, right? Take these existing legacy applications and make them function the exact same way that they did in the office, but to have it happen at home. And so those applications are basically struggling to perform as well as they have in the past in the face of latency and network bottlenecks. And in addition, we've seen customers go from having a typical few thousand remote workers to literally their entire organization, and all working remote. In some cases, customers have 100,000 plus employees all working remotely. And in the short term, there are ways that organizations can react to this situation to overcome issues with applications and networks that don't require the re-architecting of the entire application or re-architecting how the network connectivity is done. And our customers are doing exactly that with Client Accelerator. I think, Marlon, you have some examples of that you can give, right?
No, absolutely. So actually a recent example was a government customer. They came to us and they said, listen, we have a portion of our workforce right now that is mobile, about 1,000 people. We're about to basically increase that by an order of magnitude. We're going to at least a minimum of 10,000 remote workers. And of course, you have to look at the situation from their perspective. They've built their network for the capacity, perspective to enable 1,000 remote workers, and now they're going to go to 10,000. And so they had done so. Obviously, we all were at the work from home mandate. So they did so, and their applications went from, in their private environment working just fine to, I think the anecdotal piece of information we were given, or at least one piece was, my email doesn't work. If I try to do, send an email or do something within my email program, it just freezes, it crashes. It has, a lot of our applications have just become actually unusable. So think about the productivity problems there, right? We've gone from being able to do your job to literally not being able to do your job. So we implemented Client Accelerator with them, and they went from being able to, not being able to perform their job to many of them were saying, this is as good or even better in certain instances than when I'm sitting at my office with Client Accelerator. I think the information was about an average of 65% reduction in all traffic. So think about that from a capacity issue. If you're reducing by 65%. But we are also doing a lot of operational traffic. They started applying it to things like Splunk, information that was being reduced by, I think, about 90%. So they've actually gone from working internal and, everything working correctly to now being external and going from not being able to do their job at all to actually being probably more productive, sitting from their home office or from their kitchen counter, wherever they're doing their work from.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's interesting you mentioned that one customer that went from 1,000 increasing by an order of magnitude. I noticed that in an article this week, there's another agency that had the occasional 40,000 work from home, and now going to 140,000, basically an extra 100,000 work from home users. And I would imagine that they're probably more full time. So I'm sure your story is way beyond a one-off, which is what we're really all here to talk today. So thanks for your insights on that.
Absolutely. And what we're actually seeing, Scott, which is interesting, is multiple customers, and they're all increasing by about an order of magnitude. I mean, it's an incredible increase.
Thank you for that. So my next question for you both is this. It's from concerns around performance, a lack of visibility into networks and applications, agency data and applications moving to the cloud and to SaaS, as well as rapidly expanding remote connections. Government agencies are facing a lot of challenges right now. How have you seen your customers address and overcome these challenges?
Yes, I'll take that one. So the big thing is really about visibility, right? If you have good visibility, not only can you see problems within your network and your applications, but you can also improve your security posture as well, right? And those outcomes aren't independent of each other. So if you improve your ability to see what's happening, not only can you better understand performance issues and deal with them, but you can also help defend your network or respond to incidents if they happen to occur. So, as as the entire workforce has kind of moved remote, we've seen a lot of our customers have to quickly react to that situation. And one of the ways that we've seen them do that very effectively is by building out custom monitoring dashboards that let them see how the network connectivity components, which are critical to how people are able to work remotely, so VPN, switches, routers, internet connections, how those are functioning, how utilized they are, as well as what types of applications and activities users are doing remotely. So basically, as people have left the office and gone home, they've been able to maintain the ability to understand what's going on. And they're doing that with using a variety of different data sources. So data from SNMP monitoring to flow monitoring to looking at raw packet data, instrumenting end users' devices. So actually seeing end user experience from the perspective of the desktop. Even as well as monitoring the actual applications and the code itself that's running those applications. So, customers have been putting in place, more visibility. If they have been in a situation where they've, realized, we have a gap, they've quickly adapted to that, and they've built customized dashboards to help them see what's going on and report to their teams about how things are performing. And, visibility is, to me, the most important thing, right? So you can identify when issues are occurring. And it's also important on the security side. So you can't really defend yourself very well if you have poor situational awareness. And this also applies directly to, application performance where, if you can't identify and solve problems quickly, right, as a result of having poor visibility, basically you can't figure out what's actually wrong and resolve it. So for me, the most important thing is, laying that foundation of really clear understanding of what's happening, where it's happening, how it's working, so that you can make sure that the applications are going to function properly and your employees can get things done home.
Yeah, let me add.
Marlon, anything to add?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, Riverbed being the performance company, and I know that sounds doesn't sound that important, but it does because of the way that we've approached visibility, and I couldn't agree with Rob more. But, not being strictly a network side or an application side, what we realized, many years ago was that to have the best performance, you had to have what I like to, refer to or break down is situational awareness, right, to maintain it. And as I said, the end user is really the most important. We build all these things and, for nothing else other than to enable a mission or a task, right? And in the end, only end-to-end visibility will give you true situational awareness. If we break down situational awareness as a term, it means to understand, one, the situation, but in a context. So when it comes to end user experience, there are many areas that could affect that, right? Within our environments, right? So, for example, it's not good enough just to have network visibility because endpoint devices, applications, links, databases, the location, distance, security parameters. I mean, a lot of different things can affect end user performance. The mentality that, my area is the network and my network is okay really isn't good enough when it comes to true situational awareness and visibility. You don't have situational awareness in that situation. You have network awareness, right? Same goes for visibility into any one of the other areas. And that's what really kind of leads to, tiger teams, everyone getting into a room and trying to figure things out. So many years ago, Riverbed set out to develop real end-to-end visibility. We wanted to take the disparate information that Rob was talking about, SMP packets flow, and be able to provide visibility and context in its entirety, so that you can actually see what is happening when somebody clicks on a computer and they're going to an application, within your environment. And to be able to do that historically, get away from the idea of going, we need to reproduce the problem. No, actually have the records showing the problem. And you can immediately, and because it's historic, see when things deviate, right? So we do move, we always talk about, going to proactive from reactive. Well, the only way to be able to do that is to have true end-to-end visibility, true situational awareness and visibility in context. And that's what Riverbed provides.
Rob, any use cases around what you and Marlon have been discussing?
Yeah, so, in our current situation where everyone is working from home, visibility is a bit of a challenge, right? And part of that is basically, you're relying on a home office network that someone is using, and you really don't have visibility into that network itself, and you're probably never going to get actual good visibility. So, for example, you will never be getting SNMP metrics. You'll never be getting flow metrics off of your employee's cable modem or their Wi-Fi access point, right? But you can actually obtain fantastic data from the endpoint itself, which is one of the things that we do when we instrument the endpoint. And so let me give you an example of kind of what that looks like. So let's say you're using Microsoft Teams and you're having problems with voice and video, right? Which I've heard many customers have been experiencing for a variety of different reasons. But the thing there is you need to know what's actually causing the problem, right? So the way that our customers are addressing that is they're leveraging our end user experience monitoring solutions to give them real-time visibility into Microsoft Teams. And that allows them to isolate performance issues. So they can see how's the application performing, how's the workstation performing, how is the MOS score, how's the VoIP and video quality functioning. And at the same time, you're able to see how the user is connecting to the network. So if you're having issues with VoIP and video performance within Teams, we can easily correlate that to the Wi-Fi and network performance, right? So signal to noise ratios, things like that. So instead of going in circles trying to figure out, well, why is this user having these problems and trying to reproduce the issue, you have the data at hand to get to root cause. So you can be in a situation literally like this, where instead of your employee calling into the help desk and complaining of issues and you trying to figure out what's going on and going in circles, you can literally be in the position to let them know ahead of time, hey, we see that you're actually having issues, and we see it's with Teams, and we know what the root cause is, which is there's some Wi-Fi performance issues in your home office, and we're shipping you a new Wi-Fi access point to help you resolve those. So, the ability to see what is happening and have, really good situational awareness lets you act before problems become a major issue and head them off before major user complaints are going on.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob and Marlon. As we wrap up with our last minute or so left, either of you have some practical ideas to share with the audience, like what's one thing they may look to do over the coming months to enhance employee productivity?
So, looking a little bit further down the road over, say, the next 6 months or so, there's a lot of different ways you can optimize performance. And, in my opinion, the main thing to do is isolate the root cause of different performance problems that you may have, look at the solutions, and then figure out what's the estimated difficulty to implement it, what's the likelihood of success, and what's the cost associated with the different possible solutions that you have. So, for example, with legacy applications, it might be a lot cheaper and more expedient to implement mitigating technologies such as client accelerated to improve performance than, say, rewrite the application so it performs well over the WAN. In other cases, it may be moving an application closer to the user by redeploying it within some IaaS infrastructure. The main big thing is identify how you could solve a problem and then look at utilizing the least costly and least complex way to resolve it quickly.
Marlon?
Yeah, I would, just to be cognizant of time here, I would agree with what Rob says, but I would also say that, the silver linings, right? The situation that we're in with work from home has been difficult from a perspective of maintaining performance, getting application performance, and those are all things that we definitely need to focus on right now. But I think what it's also done is, as I said earlier, uncovered the fact that one of the areas that needs to, along our modernization journey, which we all were doing before COVID came along, one of the areas that was the most difficult, or the part that was really kind of holding organizations back, the network itself and how we maintain, deploy it, how we configure it, how we manage it, that became, a lot more apparent, the lack of agility, the lack of flexibility. So maybe start taking a look at our plans for modernization, take a step back and realize that, this foundational part, the network, we need to, come up with a plan, or maybe take a step back and think about how we can improve it, start building it to the point where it has the capabilities to basically support the capabilities that we want. We all want to move to automation. We all want to move to cloud, fully SaaS. So I think it's uncovered, a glaring problem, and this is an opportunity to take a step back while we're dealing with COVID, take a step back and say, our plans moving forward for modernization, are they the right ones, or do we need to refactor or rethink these a little?
Perfect. Thanks, Marvin. I do see that someone asked an online chat question around how does security play a role in the push for more remote work. It obviously plays a huge role. And we would argue that visibility across your infrastructure is a key part of that. That does lead us to the next session, but before then, I do see we are at the end of our time. We do want to thank you all for joining our session on accelerating government's remote productivity. We do encourage you to join the next session in today's Work from Home Summit, which is specifically on securing a remote connection, and that starts at 10:30. Thank you, Marlon and Rob.